I never thought I'd be back here. Sitting in my car outside a dingy little coffee shop on the edge of town, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, I tried to remember how I even got to this point. 3 years. 3 years since they kicked me out. 3 years of silence. 3 years of clawing my way out of the pit they threw me into, alone. And now? Now they wanted to talk. I exhaled sharply, pressing my forehead against the steering wheel. The email from my dad had been short. We need to talk. It's about the ring. Just like that. No, how are you? No, we miss you. No acknowledgement of the hell they put me through. Just about the ring. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. For them, this was about fixing a mistake. For me, this was about 3 years of my life I could never get back. I glanced at my phone. A dozen unread texts from Molly. Another handful from Mom. I hadn't responded to any of them. What was there to say? Oh, you found the ring? Yes, I can just forget you ruined my life for nothing. The worst part? A small, pathetic part of me still wanted to go inside. Still wanted answers. Closure. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The cafe smelled like burnt coffee and cinnamon, the kind of artificial warmth that never quite feels real. My parents were already there, sitting at a corner table. Mom looked nervous, her hands wrapped around a mug like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Dad sat stiffly, his face unreadable. And Molly wouldn't even look at me. I stopped in front of them, crossing my arms. All right. I'm here. Say what you need to say. Mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. Jacob. No, I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. Just don't. You don't get to start this with tears. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Dad cleared his throat. We made a mistake. I let out a short, humorless laugh. No kidding. We thought we were protecting Molly, he continued, his voice heavy. We thought. You thought I was a thief, I interrupted. You thought I was capable of stealing from my own family, selling off something that meant the world to my sister. And you didn't even hesitate. Molly's grip on her coffee cup tightened. Her knuckles were white. Still, she didn't speak. Mom reached across the table, her fingers barely brushing mine before I pulled away. We were wrong, she whispered. We know that now. Now. My voice cracked. Now that you found it? I shook my head, taking a step back. Tell me, what would have happened if you never found it? Would you still think I was a liar? A disappointment? Or would you have just let me rot out there, pretending I never existed? Mom let out a quiet sob. Dad looked down, guilt etched into every line on his face. And Molly still wouldn't look at me. I turned to her, my stomach twisting. And you? She swallowed hard. Jacob, I. Say it, I snapped. Say what you did. Say what you let happen to me. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I saw her throat bob as she swallowed. And for a second, a tiny, fleeting second, I thought she might actually own up to it. But then she just whispered, I'm sorry. I laughed. A real laugh this time. Cold. Hollow. That's it. I asked. 3 years. 3 years of my life gone. And all you have to say is sorry. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Jacob, please. No, I said, cutting him off. You don't get to please me. You don't get to sit here and act like an apology fixes anything. They all stared at me, waiting. I took a shaky breath, suddenly exhausted. I came here to hear you out, I said. And now I have. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't go home right away. I got in my car, started the engine, then just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. My heart was still pounding from the confrontation, adrenaline buzzing under my skin like an electric current I couldn't shake. 3 years. 3 years of silence. And now, after all this time, that was their big apology? I let out a bitter laugh, slamming my fist against the dashboard. They didn't want to fix anything. They wanted to relieve their guilt. That's all this had ever been to them. A mistake to correct, not a life they had ruined. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. I groaned, finally grabbing it off the passenger seat. Molly, 7:42 p.m. Jacob, please. Just let me explain. Molly, 7:43 p.m. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to hear me out. Molly, 7:45 p.m. Just one conversation. That's all I'm asking. I stared at the messages, my jaw tight. My first instinct was to block her, but something about her wording unsettled me. Not I want to talk to you. Not I'm sorry. I need you to hear me out. I exhaled sharply, drumming my fingers against the steering wheel. Every part of me screamed to ignore her, to just drive away and leave it all behind. Instead, I found myself typing. Me, 7:49 p.m. One conversation. That's it. Her reply came almost instantly. Molly, 7:50 p.m. Thank you. I shut my eyes and leaned back against the seat. Why did I feel like I was about to regret this? We met at a park the next evening. Neutral ground. Somewhere public, so I wouldn't be tempted to scream at her. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench near the fountain, arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked different. Smaller, somehow. The usual confidence she always carried, the superiority, was gone. Good. I walked up slowly, keeping my distance. All right. Talk. Molly flinched at my tone but nodded. She took a shaky breath, staring at her hands. I lied, she said finally. The words didn't register at first. Then my stomach dropped. I felt my hands clench into fists. What? Her eyes were glassy, rimmed with red. Back then, she whispered. When I accused you, I wasn't sure the ring was stolen. The world tilted. I stared at her, my pulse roaring in my ears. You knew. She squeezed her eyes shut. I suspected. I remembered bumping the counter before it disappeared. I even thought, for a second, that maybe it had fallen. But I was scared, Jacob. I was scared that if I said that, Adam would be mad, that Mom and Dad would think I was irresponsible. So when they asked me what happened, she swallowed hard. It was easier to blame you. My whole body went rigid. Easier. Easier. That word repeated in my head, over and over, until all I could hear was a dull ringing in my ears. I let out a breath, trying to stay calm. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You knew there was a chance I was innocent. And you let them destroy my life anyway? Molly's shoulders shook. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. That if you really didn't take it, it would turn up, and everything would be fine. But then Mom and Dad, her voice cracked. They believed me so fast. They didn't even question it. And by the time I realized how bad it had gotten, it was too late. I took a step back, shaking my head. No, this couldn't be real. I had spent years trying to make sense of it, trying to understand why my own sister had turned on me so easily. And now, hearing the truth straight from her mouth. It was just selfishness. She had ruined my life because it was easier. I let out a hollow laugh. So that's it, huh? My voice wavered, but I didn't care. You threw me away because you didn't want to take responsibility for losing your own damn ring? Tears streamed down her face. I was a coward. No, I snapped. You were worse than that. You were my sister. And you let me suffer. You let me sleep in my car. You let me believe I was nothing. Because it was convenient for you. Molly sobbed, burying her face in her hands. But I felt nothing. I had spent too long drowning in my own pain to have any sympathy left for hers. I don't expect you to forgive me, she choked out. I just needed you to know the truth. I turned to leave, my entire body shaking with rage. She didn't try to stop me. And that was the only good decision she had ever made. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Molly's words replaying in my head like a broken record. I knew there was a chance the ring wasn't stolen. It was easier to blame you. Easier. That word burrowed into my skull like a parasite, refusing to let go. I had spent 3 years trying to make sense of what happened, trying to understand how my own family could turn on me so fast. And now I knew. There had never been some deeper reason, some hidden truth that would make it all make sense. Molly let them ruin me because it was the easiest option. I turned onto my side, squeezing my eyes shut. I wanted to forget, to move on, to pretend the conversation had never happened. But the thing about the truth? It doesn't let go. The next morning, I went through the motions. Got up, made coffee, checked my phone. Another missed call from Mom. A few unread texts from Molly. I didn't open them. I wasn't ready to deal with her, or with any of them. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. Instead, I focused on work. The warehouse was busy that day, shipments coming in, inventory checks, people barking orders across the floor. Normally, I liked the distraction, liked the rhythm of it. But today, I felt off. Like I was moving in slow motion, everything muffled under the weight of my thoughts. Trevor noticed. You look like shit, he said bluntly, handing me a clipboard. Thanks, man. Real uplifting. He raised an eyebrow. You talked to them? I hesitated, gripping the clipboard tighter. Yeah, and I let out a slow breath, rubbing the back of my neck. Molly knew. Trevor's expression darkened. Knew what? That I didn't take it. That there was a chance the ring wasn't stolen. She accused me anyway. He cursed under his breath. Dude, I don't even know why I'm surprised, I muttered. I should have known. I did know deep down. I shook my head, swallowing hard. I guess I kept hoping there was a better reason. Something that would make it hurt less. Trevor leaned against a stack of crates, crossing his arms. And does it? I let out a humorless laugh. No. It makes it worse. He nodded, like he understood. And maybe he did. I had never told him the full story, not really. He knew the basics, that my family kicked me out over something I didn't do, that I had to start over from nothing. But I had never let him see the messier parts. The nights I spent wondering if maybe they were right about me. The way I still, even now, caught myself craving their approval. Trevor sighed. So what now? That was the question, wasn't it? I had spent so long telling myself I needed closure, that if my family ever admitted they were wrong, I could finally move on. But I had my answer now, and I didn't feel any lighter. I don't know, I admitted. Trevor clapped a hand on my shoulder. Well, if you ever want to get blackout drunk about it, you know where to find me. I huffed a laugh, shaking my head. I'll keep that in mind. It was a small thing, but somehow it helped. At least someone had my back. That night, I got another text from Mom. Mom, 9:17 p.m. Jacob, I know you're hurt. I know we can't undo what we did. But please, can we just talk? I stared at the message for a long time. I could ignore it. Block her number. Keep pretending I didn't care. But the truth was, I did care. I just didn't know if I could ever trust them again. Finally, I typed back. Me, 9:24 p.m. one conversation. That's it. She responded immediately. Mom, 9:25 p.m. thank you. I sighed, tossing my phone onto the nightstand. Tomorrow, I'd see them again. And for the first time, they would be the ones begging for a second chance. I met them at the same coffee shop. It was early evening, the sky fading into that hazy blue before sunset. I parked, but didn't move right away. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. I didn't know why I was here. Closure? Answers. Maybe I just wanted to look them in the eye and see if they were really sorry, or if they just wanted to ease their own guilt. Either way, I wasn't walking in there as the same kid they threw out 3 years ago. I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and walked inside. They were already there, sitting at the same table in the corner. Mom's eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying. Dad looked stiff, like he didn't know how to sit comfortably anymore. And Molly was absent. I raised an eyebrow. Where is she? Mom's lips pressed together. She thought it'd be better if she wasn't here. I huffed a laugh. Better for who? Silence. No answer. I pulled out a chair and sat down, crossing my arms. All right. You wanted to talk. So talk. Mom reached for my hand instinctively, the way she used to when I was a kid, but stopped herself halfway. She pulled back, folding her fingers together in her lap. Jacob, she started, voice soft. We failed you. Dad exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. We were supposed to protect you. And instead, we threw you away. I didn't respond. Let them sit in it. Let them feel the weight of it. Mom's voice broke. I wake up every night, thinking I hear you coming home. I kept your room the same. She let out a shaky breath. I didn't want to believe you were really gone. Something twisted in my chest. For a second, a brief, fleeting second, I pictured that. Her sitting alone in my old room, staring at the walls, waiting for a son who wasn't coming back. But then I remembered the way she cried when she told me to leave. Like she was the victim. Like I had done something to her. I swallowed hard. Do you even know what happened to me? Mom blinked. What? After you kicked me out, I said, my voice eerily calm. Do you have any idea what my life was like? She paled. Dad's expression tightened. I slept in my car. I continued. Some nights, I crashed on Trevor's couch. But he had his own problems, his own life. I worked shitty jobs just to afford a motel room once in a while. I went days without eating sometimes. Mom's hands shook. Jacob, I thought about calling, I admitted. So many times. Just to beg for another chance. But I knew you wouldn't believe me. And you know what's funny? I let out a bitter laugh. I still wanted you to. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. His mouth opened, then closed, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Mom sobbed into her hands. I let the silence stretch between us before leaning back in my chair. So tell me, I said quietly, what exactly do you want from me now? Dad finally spoke, his voice rough. We want you back in our lives. I stared at him, expression unreadable. Why? He hesitated. Because we love you. I tilted my head, studying him. Did you love me when you accused me of being a thief? When you turned my room upside down looking for evidence? When you threw me out like I was some stranger off the street. Dad flinched. That's not it. It is, I said. You didn't love me then. Not enough. Mom wiped at her face, breath hitching. Jacob, please. We can't change what we did, but we can try to make it right. I exhaled slowly, my heart pounding. I had spent 3 years wondering what I'd do if this moment ever came. If I'd yell, if I'd walk away, if I'd let them suffer the way they made me suffer. But the truth was, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted. Mom nodded, sniffling. I understand. Dad swallowed hard. Just, let us prove that we mean it. I looked at them, the people who raised me, the people who let me down when it mattered most. Then, finally, I said, we'll see. And that was the best I could give them. A month passed. I kept my distance. Mom called every week, just once. Sometimes I picked up, sometimes I didn't. When I did, we talked about surface-level things, work, the weather, nothing deeper. She never pushed, never begged. Just checked in. Like she was afraid to break whatever fragile thread was keeping me from cutting them off completely. Dad sent emails. Short ones. An article about a new business opening in town. A documentary recommendation. Things he used to do when I was a kid, back when he still acted like he believed in me. I didn't respond. But I read them. Molly? I didn't hear from her at all. Not until the night before I moved. The job in Chicago had come fast. One day, I was just thinking about applying. The next, I was on the phone with a recruiter. A week later, I had an offer. Better pay. Better position. A fresh start. I told myself it wasn't about running away. But maybe it was. Trevor threw me a going-away party at some dive bar near the warehouse. A few coworkers showed up, bought me drinks, cracked jokes about how I'd come crawling back in a month when I realized Chicago winters were a different kind of hell. It was the most at home I had felt in years. But when I got back to my apartment, she was there. Molly. Sitting on the floor outside my door, knees pulled to her chest. She looked up when I approached, eyes puffy, hair a mess. Like she'd been sitting there for hours. I stopped a few feet away. What are you doing here? She let out a breath. I heard you were leaving. I crossed my arms. So? Her fingers twisted together in her lap. So I needed to see you before you go. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Molly. I know you hate me, she said quickly. And you should. I don't expect anything from you, Jacob. I can't let you leave without saying this. I clenched my jaw but didn't walk away. She swallowed hard, eyes shining with unshed tears. I live with it every day, she whispered. What I did. What I let happen to you. Every time I walk into Mom and Dad's house, every time I see your empty room, I remember that I did that. She sucked in a shaky breath, and I don't know how to fix it. I stared at her, emotions warring inside me. I wanted to tell her it wasn't fixable, that she didn't get to feel bad about this, that she didn't get to make this about her. But I didn't say any of that, because for the first time, I actually believed she meant it. And that almost pissed me off more. I let out a slow, exhausted breath. You don't get to fix it, Molly. Her shoulders slumped. You don't get to undo what happened. You don't get to make me forget the years I lost, the nights I spent wondering why the people who were supposed to love me just let me go. My voice was steady, but my hand shook. You can't fix it. And you don't deserve my forgiveness. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She nodded, like she already knew. I swallowed hard, then added, softer, but I hope you forgive yourself one day. Her breath hitched. I stepped past her, unlocking my door. Before I went inside, I hesitated. Not because I wanted to say anything else, but because, for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was the one leaving her behind. And I was okay with that. The morning I left, Mom sent one last text. Mom, 7:12 a.m. I love you. No matter what. Be safe. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, finally, I typed back. Me, 7:17 a.m. you too. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As I drove out of town, my old life fading in the rearview mirror, I expected to feel something. Sadness. Relief. Anything. But all I felt was quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating quiet I had lived in for years. A different kind. Lighter. Like I was finally moving towards something. Like, for the first time in a long time, I was free.